This episode was mainly dedicated to activists. To save you some time, I'm going to jump right to the end and show you what the final conclusion was. Here's that now.
Sometimes
to summarize,
activism is bad, except for when it's good.
Yeah, and even when it's good, careful. And when it's bad, it's not necessarily all bad.
Yeah.
But please don't try and give me a pamphlet. Just don't give me a pamphlet for anything.
Pamphlets.
Very soon.
That's the only definitive thing we can take from this
And
episode.
keep your social media measured. Unless you don't want to. Then just do what you want and express your opinions. We believe in freedom of speech. Okay, so pretty enlightening, right? Very fantastic. So now you're going to see the long hour plus GST journey we took to get there. It's Oscar and Luke back with me again. Another episode of the With Joe Wehbe podcast. And if this is too long for you and you just want some a shorter takeaway on the whole activism thing, which I think is really interesting, I did write a little Substack article, which will be in the description or show notes, so you can check that out. But yep, it's a very interesting one, tricky one, delicate subject. I hope we did it justice. Enjoy the episode, and thanks for checking out the podcast. Thanks, gentlemen, for coming back, especially Oscar, because he's got a bit of a predicament this week.
Mm-hmm. What's the predicament?
Well, he can't even sit on a chair. It's hard for him to sit on the chair.
Yeah. So I have this cyst.
You think it's a cyst?
Yeah.
It's
I think undiagnosed. This is prognosis. I have a cyst in my bum crack area.
Not even a joke.
So I've been lying on my stomach and my side pretty much all week. Just been fun.
He's in a lot of pain. He's in like a very sensitive area.
Yeah,
So he can't really.
I actually have my pants like undone right now to give myself more.
That is
more room.
So much TMI.
Thank you for adding that.
Yeah.
Have you been to a doctor?
I just felt like you should be aware.
No, thanks. You didn't really need to tell me about that.
I don't just have my pants undone because I'm a freak. It's
okay.
For medical reasons.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
Have you been to a doctor yet?
No.
Doctor's overseas.
Yeah.
He's coming back
Monday.
I think I heard the door.
Yeah, there's
other people live here.
Sorry.
Unless it's a problem. Does it break your concentration?
Clearly.
Yeah. Well, I can shut the door, but then it gets hot. And then we'll put the aircon on. So
no, it's all good.
These are some of our options. And so we're here against all odds, I guess.
Yeah.
Thanks
that's
for
the take home.
Sort of
and
being here.
Real trooper over here. How you all right? Had a good week?
Doing well.
You don't have any issues?
Hamstring's doing good?
Hamstring is on the up and up, so.
That's good. Your kettlebell exercises?
Yep.
Making sure it's all strong?
It's been paying off. I went to the physio on yesterday. He said I've made progress, which is good.
Yeah, good.
So I can increase my
This
running.
feels like a Chiefs episode now, talking about
I was about to go into my full... I was about to go into what he then prescribed, which is different kinds of exercises, if anyone wants to hear about my strength and conditioning routine.
As long as you're doing them, that's the main thing.
I am.
If it works, then you can come back and...
The vibe I'm getting right now is that I should not continue with this conversation.
It's all right. It's valuable context. It's part of your life.
Yeah.
What did we say we were going to talk about? We were talking about activism this week.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys have come prepared.
Not really, no. That
was our prep.
You've seen the full extent of the preparation.
We're going to talk about activism.
Well, we could, Yeah. We can start there.
In vague terms, yeah.
Because...
It's good.
I'm just going to be honest. You know what? It all begins... the peak of that experience of encountering activism is the best... Or like the annoying side is like a university, of course. And that's...
what do you mean?
Just something... Well, because there's so many people championing...
You mean activists within the university?
Yeah, I used to walk into uni like this, that's the symbol... in the church, that's a symbol when you're in the line and you don't want communion.
Did you actually?
I used to walk because they are so relentless. I don't know, UTS, maybe
serious?
It wasn't as bad. Sydney was really bad. They were like you get
this
you get off the
main
train
concourse.
at Redfern and they're lined up, not every single day, but very often. And they got pamphlets for something. And they're very pushy.
Yeah, it's the Marxists and the the
University
Christian group,
Marxists.
Yeah, University Marxists, and the Evangelical Christian Society as well. Those are the two big ones.
Those are two interesting groups.
They love a good pamphlet.
Not a lot of chill there. Not a lot of chill.
What are the Marxists normally saying?
Man, I don't listen to a word they say.
No, but what are they normally? They're giving out like.
Yeah, they're trying to give you a pamphlet. Yeah, they're always promoting an event.
Are they like chucking slogans at you as well?
Yeah,
there are slogans.
Because like when you go onto the main like concourse at USyd, there's like you go up these stairs and there's like this guardrail with a wall on it that goes like over the top of the street, and it's just always filled with.
So you always got to walk that way, unless you want to cross at the lights.
Yeah. And it's always filled with like capitalism is crisis and all this other stuff. Like the whole wall. And then they're right at the end of like where the street ends, like ready to just.
It's something else, man.
I'd love it. I wonder if someone can go over, if you should go over and be like, "What's your alternative again?" I don't know.
Well, that's why I used to do these ones because they're like, you know. Like here. I mean, the only other experience I've had in my life that's comparable to that is going to certain countries, like maybe like I was just in Vietnam, for example, and the way some locals who, you know, at least they're trying to make a living. Yeah. They have like a more genuine cause, but you know how they pest you, like, you know, shirt. They're all trying to sell the same thing, and you just saying no, and then they don't take no for an. It's like that, you know. So I used to just walk like, no, and I'd have my backpack on and I'd do that and I'd just like not make eye contact and I'd walk through.
That's kind of like the
which is again, that's me being actually very dramatic.
What about the ones with the clipboard through the city that are...
Oh, them. I have a funny story about those people.
Okay.
So I was at Central Station once, this was years ago, and the guy wanted a donation for something. And so, you know, like, yeah, you know, you want to help people when you can. Yes, of course. But, you know, everyone knows they're quite annoying. It's the worst possible time, you know, on the street. And they're trying all those tactics to get you to talk to them, and they try and give you a compliment or whatever. It's like, oh, hey, dude, mate, I like you. How you going? They try and get the eye. Yeah. Anyway, so this guy, but I had at that time, I had a good escape or excuse, so I wasn't afraid. Or I didn't have to avoid in my head. The guy's got a clipboard or whatever, and he's like, "Hey mate, you want to donate for XYZ, whatever it was?" And I pulled this one on him. I go, "I actually run it. I actually run a non-profit. You know, this was back when I'm doing the Nepal thing.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't expect that one.
I actually run, you know, an organization of my own. You know, which is, you know, created by Nick Abraham's hard work and sacrifice. But you know, I'm running it, so I can't really, you know." I'm a young guy doing that. Can't really go, you know, throwing money around other stuff. I'm doing my bit. It was like I'm doing my bit, you know. But I explained it quickly, more quickly than that.
Yeah.
And then this guy just goes, "Oh, really?" He's like, "You can get us to like raise money for you if you want." He goes, "We don't actually work for whatever the organization was like."
They're just the engine.
We're a third party. We're a third party that raises money.
I don't believe in a word.
And we take X%, you know? And he's like, "Our office is just up there." And he gave me a business card. So he still had something to sell me.
Yeah.
And that's a fitting theme, because that sums up all those types. Wow, what a terrible thing to just lump them all into one big category. But they all have that kind of. There was always an answer, and you know, there's always more.
Yeah,
you know, there's always something else to complain about, some other thing that you should be doing, or it's just ironically like endless, and that's why I very rarely take those people seriously. But yeah, the university ones are a very funny one, obviously, because it's everyone's that age. They're kind of Oscar-ish age or slightly younger.
Don't know much.
And
sorry, excuse me.
Don't know much.
No,
there's always exceptions.
Exceptions.
The exception that proves the rule.
Yeah. What?
And I wonder if you guys think about why that is, especially at that young age. There's a lot of very people very stirred by different causes and stuff like that. And I say different, not just everyone's got a different cause, but like it's one thing and then soon it's something else. Yeah. Just as passionate. Why do you think why is it like that, How does that happen? Especially it's not just the young years, is it? But it's most funny in young people. It's most entertaining.
I think Oscar can start giving his...
Well, I think...
You're in the... Oscar, speak to us from the young person's perspective.
Happy to. Well, first of all, it's people with time on their hands.
Yeah, that's true. Too much thinking time.
Yeah, it really
is. You could argue.
But yeah, look, leaving high school with the conformity that comes with the uniforms and a strict timetable and all that, university becomes a place where you think you can express yourself in a place that people want to listen.
I like where this is going.
I love it.
Well, people just think that at university people actually want to listen to that kind of thing, but really 90% of people just want to go to their tutes and join societies where they get to go to parties, things like that.
And that's not necessarily say people don't care about things going on in the world.
Exactly.
Just because you want to have your head down and do your bit at uni.
Yeah. I also want to know what degree they were doing because I did not see too much of that in my IT degree at UTS.
Funny that. I think IT keeps people busy.
Yeah.
And they're a bit more introverted. Maybe. So I don't think that's their vice.
Yeah.
No, I never had to do this walking through my university.
Yeah, I doubt they're a STEM degree.
Not most often.
Definitely not business school people.
Let's just call it how it is, guys. It's arts degrees on it mainly, I'd say.
Yeah, but that's a pretty pretty big net, like.
Yeah. I mean, I had arts stream because I did psychology, but with an arts major, and so you definitely in those subjects there were more people with like blue hair and.
Yeah,
all those things. And
come on, man.
You said, what? You don't have
What's
blue
wrong
hair.
with blue hair? Come on, man.
Nothing wrong with blue hair. I think it's amazing. It looks vivacious, but it just there's
graceful.
What's the word? It correlates with certain other behaviors and extreme viewpoints and things like that. And I always find things like that ironic. I find it very interesting when the people who believe the same thing might tend to have some other characteristics in common, like the same colored hair or, the same kind of degree. And I guess like our interests as people, it's like they tend to like form as part of a deeper thing. It's an identity. It's like you get an identity package.
Yeah.
And it comes with all these things, like if you want to be a young startup guy in the 2020s, like you're reading Marcus Aurelius. You're reading meditations. You wear X sorts of shoes. You wear these sorts of t-shirts, blah blah. And then if it's like you go somewhere else, there's another identity package, which is like the young kind of, I don't know, like university activist. And it's like you'll do one of these 4 degrees. You probably dye your hair. You probably have piercings or long hair at some point. Like. Hippies, like it's just there's clusters of things that might not necessarily be like directly related, but form part of the identity package. You know what I mean? It's like a fashion. I just find it so interesting. I don't assume that I'm above that. Obviously, I don't know if I have anything that's striking or obvious with anything I'm into. But this is what we talk about a lot: is when you are really into things that get you really stirred up. I think that's when it's more likely that you fit into that sort of category, and I think you do things that are more like distinct and really stand out a lot to people who are not part of those groups in the rest of society. Like the more you're into something, obviously, the more radical you are about whatever, for better or for worse. Obviously, the more you're going to stand out, especially to people who are not on the same wavelength, right? Whether it's politics, whether it's something to do with field or career or or a cause you care about or involved in. But I just always find it so interesting how many different characteristics will form part of a package that a large group are all getting into. And it does make me wonder, like how much autonomy is really going on there. Like how autonomous whatever that even means, like how consciously are you choosing, like, oh yeah, I really care about X, and how much more of that is just dictated by deeper criteria that you have no like kind of visibility over, if that makes sense. And but then also it doesn't help if you've got too much time on your hands.
It's true. Well, I think the whole time on your hands thing is, that's like they do intentionally fill that time. Like they see that as productive time.
We all do.
Yeah.
We all fill our times with something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like this is Saturday. Yeah, this is what we're doing Saturday morning. So this is for us. But yeah, the other question I have is, obviously it's not the same for everyone, but how much do people really care about the things they get worked up on in terms of like social issues, things like that? Or how genuine is that concern? Or is it an ulterior motive thing?
I've a few occasions pressed, I don't know, you ask questions into certain things to test the level of knowledge that someone has on the thing that they're sort of, and sometimes it's not, it just, yeah, it's very superficial in a way, depending. There's a lot of people that go very into depth, but I think sometimes you can sort of just, yeah, I don't know, just buy in wholesale.
So when you ask someone, what would you say is like a red flag? Lack of knowledge?
Yeah, like a knowledge, but a lot of the things are quite hard to know in detail about. Like, for example, something like climate change. If you keep pressing,
none of us know surely that deeply the science. But, you can grasp what's put out and consider that and read about it and all that, right?
Yeah, the flip side of that is, like, for example, if you want to be skeptical, like probably I was in that case, you can probably undo someone's thinking pretty easily, and that's not necessarily the best thing as well. But I just keep asking questions. Yeah. But I don't know. It's hard to...
What do you think about?
Well,
often, like, how genuine or...
A lot of the time it is things that... It's usually convenient for people to take. Like, it usually aligns with their self-interest.
Yeah.
Usually. And the level of sophistication, like the level of sophistication behind it is usually revealed when they're trying to teach you about it rather than like being in opposition to you. Because activism usually comes from this moral... like
high ground,
exactly,
superiority.
So when you directly oppose it, like it becomes about like you're a bad person. Like that's usually how the argument goes.
Very unconsciously.
Yeah.
But you just fall into that pattern.
But if you act like you actually don't know anything about the topic and you just start asking interesting questions, you can sometimes reveal some, like, because the activists have their guard down.
Yeah.
You can reveal some of the holes in their logic and things like that.
Oh yeah, well, it can't be antagonistic.
Yeah.
Once it's antagonistic, I'll be honest, like a good example, not commenting on this issue at all, but like a very big thing.
Just like me, climate change, take me out of that.
Yeah, we're not having a climate change debate. We're not having, but a big one is a lot of the modern wokeism that generates a lot of YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and whatever moments. So often pronoun debates and transgender, things like that, obviously generate a lot of heated reactions, and not very involved in that conversation. But you watch like a Matt Walsh video or something like that, and you have someone who's at an event asking some sort of academic or public someone with a very publicly stated opinion or stance, and they come and ask them questions, usually at universities, usually young people.
Yeah.
And you can just see from the way people ask questions, like I can't help but notice the body language, and you just look at them, and it's like they've come with a loaded gun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm ready to you can see them like bracing themselves for conflict. And I'm wondering, like, is this person it's a either or, but like, how much is this person wanting to ask about X? For example, you said that we can't do this or that. And why do you say that? How can you possibly say that? And how much are they looking for conflict? You know what I mean? Like, how much are we just looking for conflict? Because, like with any kind of relationship you form with something, and even, think about the kind of addiction spectrum here. I think about the concept of tolerance, right? You build up tolerance for things. And even I'd say, like, we build up tolerance for things like conflict and anger and aggression. I think it's a big reason why people, all the cliches about the partners you find in life, for example, romantic partners, and the jokes that guys are looking for their mothers and girls are looking for their dads. And obviously it's in all the sitcoms, and it's always very funny. I think of Barney Stinson. I think of, all those shows and those characters. But there's when you're observing life, there's so much truth to all that stuff. And you feel like a big part of it is that we learn to expect to be treated a certain way, even if it's negative, because we actually get used to it and the familiarity of that. So I think the same thing, I feel like there's a lot of looking for excuses, good excuses, convincing excuses to have conflict with getting all worked up about social issues. And that's where you come back and talk about the convenience and the self-interest behind really all beliefs, I think, and all arguments. Because why does it so quickly become so heated and antagonistic? And then you could say it becomes so heated and antagonistic because it's so important. But then I could keep going into that. I go, well, why is it so important? And I'll give a personal example because it's easy to talk abstractly. But I'd say something like education, that's something that I would say I personally was, on the podcast in particular, getting outspoken about, having a stance on, an opinion on, and that the way we educate people is, not great, and there's a lot of flaws with the school system, and you would have those, you'd be in those episodes with me, and we'd talk about stuff. And if I listen back to those episodes, like, there's good points in there, right? You say good stuff, but you're not. So the beauty of that is a good example, because you, in those conversations, you're more of a blank slate, and you're more of a asking questions person. That's good. And I was more, which is obviously, and that's what that's much safer position. Especially you don't look as stupid, ironically, whilst acting more, I don't know, you avoid looking dumb. But I listen to those episodes and I can hear myself coming in with a real angle, and being very strong and very extreme. And I go back now, I've had moments since where I definitely, after I kind of stopped being so intense, in my opinion, a bit last year, and I had a bit of a moment. That education concern is much more relaxed and balanced to me. So it's not that I would say I don't care about it, but the idea that it's conditioning everyone to be fragile in life and making us averse to failure, and it destroys creativity and wires us to be this way in life. I don't really feel as strongly about that right now. You know what I mean? Now versus then.
Is there anything in the actual argument or in the actual thinking that's changed, or is it just an easing?
It's just easing and balance and openness to that is the case, maybe, or to some extent. Okay. So if you think about a pie graph, right? Maybe 2 years ago, does education kill creativity or something? And I'd be maybe 80%, 90% confident or something, or it has a very strong effect. Now it's just it's shrunk. It's it's probably 10 or 20%, because this stuff is hard to prove and say concretely. You know, because I know people who are homeschooled who aren't necessarily different in terms of who they are psychographically and what they're like. And there's so many things that go on, it's so hard to concretely say. You got parents, the impact of parents on a child. You got, you know, the society you live in, it's very different. You got whatever's happened to you in your life. You got so many things that it's so hard to form a concrete opinion. But the funny thing is with education's a really interesting one, because you will find, again, different pockets of society tend to have aggregated beliefs about it. So I noticed a lot the startup crowd, for example, people in the technology and startup ecosystem, and a lot of the people in the personal development spheres and all that, they often sound like one another when they talk about it. And they sound a bit like how I used to talk. We're conditioned to be afraid, you know, we don't learn anything about ourselves. We learn useless things. It's so funny that there's just such a consistent language view within a group that's not, and it's personal development or something, or startups. It's not necessarily like it's not a university, it's not an education institution or anything like that, but they have the same opinion about this other thing called education, right?
Makes you wonder, where did I get those?
Where does it come from?
Where do I get those beliefs from?
Yeah, and for example, I had lunch with my cousin the other day, who's our age, and he's very smart, very intelligent guy, and, you know, has a good job in the government. And we're talking about school. He goes, I miss school. Like, I loved it, which I did too. I loved school for the most part. And he's like, I don't know why people complain about school. Like, it's a lot of fun. And I just sat there. I thought, yeah, in many ways there is nothing to complain about.
Yeah,
it is pretty good. Despite I could flip and go, yeah, but you know, I would rather. There's these elements. I ask questions. Like, we did an episode where we talked about there's some similarities between school and the prison system. Yeah, which you can still make that case. Like, it's funny that there's some similarities there, but it's not like I'm not going to march down the street with a picket, what's it called, with a sign and protest and go stop making education like the prison system. But it's just funny that there are links and maybe there's lessons in that there are some things that are similar.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and the other thing is variance, which I think is a big thing. And we were in the same year at school, but your experience was very different to mine. And similar.
In what way?
Well, we would have had different experiences slightly of school.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We're not the exact same person, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We weren't in the same classes. And he's obviously my brother, and he went to the same school 7 years later. Yeah. And his experience would have been different to mine. The school changed.
Sure.
Right? Lots of things change. So it's hard to go, this is what school does. It makes everyone dumb. I mean,
it's hard to... Yeah.
And I think I want to use that as an example that hopefully applies to all the other kind of issues, because they're always so nuanced that it's hard to make it one conversation.
Yeah.
We always bundle things up and generalize. I feel like, you know, there's so many, you know, there's always big, you know, we've got like things like abortion. You got things like marriage, you know, gay marriage. You got always, but everyone who's considering abortion, for example, rightly or wrongly, has a slightly different situation. Whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, I don't know. I find it hard to say anyway. There's people who believe one way or the other. Very fair enough. I'm just saying everyone in there is so different. That's considering that. Have similarities, but I just find it hard to boil these things down. So that, for me, is what gets particularly annoying when people are so strong activists for things like we experience in our times. You know, I wasn't around for like the civil rights movement and all that, and the you know, like kind of the Martin Luther King, and we were talking about in the car in, you know, activists from the past, Rosa Parks and things like that. I wasn't around for those things. Maybe there are certain issues that do require a bit more of a coordinated, all-out response. Maybe when it's like, how do you distinguish? But for me, there's a large percentage of what goes on is largely noise. Because I think we were talking about this yesterday. It's the identity around a thing that actually takes over, even if you care about something. And I was a good example with education. You're getting carried away in this thing that you can use to be self-righteous about and, build a whole public persona around and build, intellectual credibility around if you want to, if you're going down that path. And you make a career out of some of these things, even if it's not about the financial reward, it's the status signaling and the virtue signaling. And, I feel like radicalism is kind of, at the end of the day, radicalism. So like when you look at the people what sort of people join religious cults, like the famous, like wacky out there religious cults, what sort of people join those?
Aimless.
They often
cut off from society.
Yeah, like if you even what's the second Batman? No, which one's Bane in? Which Batman's Bane in? The third one. Is it The Dark Knight Rises? At the start, when they're on the plane, and Bane's talking to his supporters, and the guy's trying to get off, and he goes, "They'll be expecting one of us in the wreckage, brother."
Yeah.
And the guy's just got this vacant, it's perfect acting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The guy's got this vacant, that actor was in Criminal Minds as well. He's a good actor. He has a very small role in this movie. He's just vacant. He has no sense of his own identity, or, he doesn't have an ego, doesn't have nothing, because ego is your identity. It's not always bad, right? It's a sense of self. And he just goes, what does he say? He's like, "The fire rises," or something. And he's just like, "Keep the fire rising."
It was submission. Without any sort of.
Yeah. He was total, there's just a total vacuum inside, and he's just filled by whatever Bane, head of the cult in this instance, fills with him. And when I look at the radical activists, even though sometimes it's a phase and you just pass through it, especially young people, I look at it as people on that kind of spectrum, as in what's really going on is a lack of internal satisfaction or calm. Because I feel like especially I think that's why young people are always the rebels traditionally and drive movements like that, because they're often lost trying to find their place in society. You know what I mean? That's the classic thing, and it's a very distinct thing. And so it's often trying to figure out where you fit. And I think the more anxious you are about that, I'd say the more susceptible you are to being filled up. But it doesn't feel that way. It just feels like all of a sudden I really care about, how they I really care about meat or veganism, or I really care about and it just comes as a thought that's so terrible about, climate change. So it's not actually, for me, it's not all these little things, but it's always interesting. You just feel it. I listened to the Robert Kennedy interview. He's doing a lot of interviews lately because he's Robert Jr., because he's running for president, whatever he's done. And he's quite an activist. He's on Joe Rogan and all that. But when I listen to him talk, it feels like
measured.
He's measured.
Yeah.
And I just get the sense that he's actually engaging in these issues he's talking about.
Yeah, I think
it's a feeling. He may be totally phony. He may be a really good actor. He's got me hoodwinked. I don't know. I don't know if that's the feeling you got if you listened. I don't know.
I think it sounds convincing, but the issue is when you have a very little understanding of what's been talked about.
It makes it harder.
It's very difficult because it might sound convincing and logically appealing, but at the same time, the level of depth that I have about the subject is close to zero. So we're relying on him sounding convincing at that point. I think that gets a lot of people in other spheres as well, is how convincing it sounds, potentially.
So let's go into that. First, I want to talk about the difference between him and, say, people who are a bit more extreme when they communicate. To people who are a bit more extreme when they communicate, I never get the feeling like I want to listen to what this person has to say.
Well, let me just... So, for example, he goes on interviews and at least can be questioned and questioned and questioned, and he can just almost drive it down the rabbit hole. Yeah. And can like support his argument. Yeah. And I think that gives him a lot of credibility with a lot of people, including me, for example, listening. But at the same time, what I just said still stands. So I can't take a position on that. Yeah. But what I talked about before is if you ask a few questions with people and they can no longer talk about the thing they're so passionate about, it normally turns into sometimes anger.
It does.
Or you just don't understand.
In their head, they don't. I've never noticed that they really, in their head, have a moment of, I don't know what I'm talking about. What they actually do is they normally turn it back onto you and project it onto you or whoever they're talking to. And so that's your ignorance. Yeah. Yeah, man. So, man, I had big problems with the vaccines and I'll openly talk about it because we were on the same kind of page, Oscar and I, other members of our immediate family.
This is dangerous territory.
No, yeah, but... I don't, it's not really because I just didn't have a strong opinion.
Yeah.
And so, but you know what? This is the absurdity is that you get persecuted and put in a camp.
Yeah.
Despite not having a strong opinion. That's what I thought. So I'm not trying to raise that issue and say who was right or wrong. I'm just saying, I was thinking, what is going on? Now, the difference between maybe me and Oscar and a lot of other people, I didn't work in hospitality. I didn't work in a school. I didn't work in an environment that required me to get the vaccine, for example. Now, if you work in that sort of environment, I know people who work in those environments. A lot of them weren't, overly enthusiastic about the vaccine, but they had to get it. But sometimes there's other people who you have to do something. And so what you do to help justify or make it okay, you throw your weight behind it and you rearrange your beliefs to support whatever's going on and you jump on. And I had no issue with the concept of a vaccine because I've had all the other vaccines.
Yeah.
But what I thought was just wrong was how people were turning into like a club. And like if you're not with me, you're against me. On both sides. And I never identified as an anti-vaxxer. I'm not anti-science, anti-technology, anti-medicine. I think these things are great, having just come back from Vietnam and had to take antibiotics to get my stomach back on track. Western medicine's done a lot of good stuff in my life. And I had someone actually, I had several people really close to me, really good people in my life, personally attack me over my stance. And I'd ask them, how do you know this is so clearly the right thing to do? And what they go, I listen to blah blah blah. He works for the news, and he that's who I trust. I go, but how can you trust? It's like you can't just trust someone just because they're an expert. It's all right if that's the best you can do. Like when I go to the doctor, how do I know what he's saying is right? I am putting that trust in him. But doctors can be wrong. You know what I mean? Doctors are wrong all the time. So they don't pretend to be perfect. They're trying. And, the joke about weathermen, that we always have is, who knows? And this is Taleb stuff. The Nassim Taleb work is always about, for me, we're so excited to try and get confident about what we know. And we haven't earned that right. And so if you can't know, you can't know. You can't change that. Yeah. You just manage the risk despite that, but you can't just find I want to believe it. So I'll just say that the doctors on the news must know what they're talking about because they're doctors. You can always find the case, right? I look at a doctor on the news and I think, well, that's the most political kind of position there is.
Yeah.
That person's got all these reasons to, all these biases acting on them, all this pressure, there's plenty of potential for things to get blurry. And so, but I come back to your point, because like that person doesn't go, I don't know what I'm talking about. They go, listen to all the doctors out there saying this is what you should do. See how that logic is so, to me, that's very airtight. That's compelling narrative. There's nothing wrong. I'm not saying you're an idiot for just believing what every doctor says, because you're not, because that's fair enough. But my opinion with vaccines was, well, if I'm not in a rush, I'm not going to go out. I don't want to do anything to hurt anyone. I'll stay at home or do things within reason, within the confines. But I'll wait to see this play out.
Yeah, and
before I make my decision.
You're within your right to do so.
I am.
Yeah.
And what I did not respect was that people putting pressure on that right. And it was happening not just with isolated individuals. It was a social narrative pressuring people. You know what I mean?
I think
that's not okay, in my opinion. I don't mind people getting the vaccine. I don't mind people not getting the vaccine. You had old people who were stubborn saying, I'm not getting a bloody vaccine. And I thought old people in general should get the vaccine. My grandmother died from COVID. She didn't get the second shot in time. Got COVID, passed away. Very aware of the severity. You're out of camera, just come a bit closer. No, sit in a bit. Sit in a bit. So I'm very aware of the severity, but as a younger person, I wasn't in the same situation as my grandmother. You know what I mean? But even then, how much can you force someone who doesn't want to do something? Very, very hard. There has to be a line somewhere, because at the end of the day, we're all individuals. If we're competent, still, we should make our own decisions.
Yeah, you're able to make up your own mind, like you said.
Yeah, there's a lot of old people who were like, "Nah, I'm not getting it."
Yeah,
yeah. and their kids, like middle-aged kids of theirs, were just having this headache of how do I get this through to them. That's tough. But I just think it's insane that we could justify. Like I just can't stand any form of evangelicism, really. Which is what I mean. That just really strongly advocating what you believe, irrespective of, like, with no restraint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With no consideration that you could be wrong or that it's not for everyone. And that your default is what I believe is actually best for you.
It's interesting that like a lot of the people that have a much deeper understanding of what they're advocating for, to me, don't come across as like the preaching type, because I think they have somewhat of a different understanding that you're not really going to convince people.
Yes. Yeah.
By sort of by using moral things, you know what I mean? Like, for example, I a while ago listened to a podcast with Joe Rogan and Rich Roll. So Rich Roll is an endurance athlete that's like vegan, but he's not sort of he's got like he's very meat. For everything that's given him in his life, and is actually a spokesperson for it, but he's not like
beautiful. Yep.
But he's not like ramming it down anyone's throat. He's kind of living his life.
That's exactly the best example.
He's living his life. He's not
on the fence either,
and he went toe to toe.
And that's the thing. I don't believe in personally.
He's not on the fence. No, he's like, this is what I believe.
On the fence.
This is what I believe because of this.
Yeah.
You don't have to like, but he will still voice what he's thinking about.
Yeah.
And he went toe to toe with, because Joe Rogan's
he's meat.
He's a meat eater.
So it was kind of like but they still had a very respectful discussion, and they were just both poking each other on what they believe in.
Something Gilly once said is, for a conversation to be effective or whatever, or a debate, whatever, has to be tender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't ever get anything productive from, making it antagonistic argument,
If
you're trying to win, then you've lost already.
Yeah, if you're trying to win. Like,
it's interesting that he has a legal background as well.
Rich Roll.
Yeah.
And which would probably inform that stance.
Yeah, which, and Joe Rogan has...
Lawyers are always walking on the eggshells.
Yeah.
The disclaimer, you're like, well, we don't really know that, and like, this is my advice. And as lawyers, they're insured. You know what I mean? And they never want to step outside their little field, because you ask a lawyer a generic question all the time.
Yeah.
And they go, I can't tell you, I'm not an insurance lawyer.
Yeah.
I can't tell you, I'm not a contract lawyer. You know, they refuse to to cross out of their tiny little, which represents like what I think is normally like a best possible way of dealing with beliefs and on what's right and wrong is some real like kind of, hey, this is what I can say, but I can't justify that. And I never really believe the people who get really worked up all the time and really forceful. I just never feel like they genuinely actually care about the thing they're talking about that much. They may have at a time. I feel like it's become about something deeper. By a point it gets to there. And so I normally pretty much always totally discard. And that's why I'd never even argue with those people.
Because you'd be feeding it, and also...
And I'd be like...
You'd be feeding your own want for conflict as well.
You would. Because then I don't have much these days that I'm aware of.
Yeah. I'm definitely... not that I don't know.
Sometimes you enjoy a fight.
You do.
Especially like if it's a dinner time conversation or you're at the pub. Someone's really worked up about something. And you remain calm. And you're calmly asking them questions that because you're calm, tend to make them look foolish. And that can be very enjoyable. And I think people deserve that who are giving everyone a hard time about what they should or shouldn't do. And it's not just that. There's another layer, which is I call this the Instagram layer, which is it's not like having one-on-one conversations with you about you should vote this way, you should do more for the environment, you should blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's all the signaling that people put in their Instagram content. And that's things like, you know, putting up quotes from certain books or, you know, like celebrating that they voted this way and whatever the latest big thing to vote for was, election or whatever. And again, the rich roll thing, like I'm all for people advocating, but I don't know. Sometimes you just feel, or I guess if you know a person, you know whether it's like, oh yeah, he's talking about vegan and whatever, blah, 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 interesting health benefits that it's had for him. But then there's other people, and often if you know them, this is why. But they might be championing, let's say, veganism, whatever. And you just go, oh, this is the latest thing that so-and-so's into because they want to be into something. And they want to... It's like you enjoy footy when you have a team, mostly.
Yeah.
Because you can get into it. You get emotionally invested. You get worked up. It's something to get angry at once a week. Bloody refs or bloody, you know, Fino, Sloan.
Yeah.
Dragons players that sometimes let us down.
Hurt us.
And I'm very aware that when I'm at the footy, it's the most valuable, trivial thing that exists in the world to me. You know what I mean? Because I just, you know, and it's escapism. It's escape from your week or your life. You know, if you were sick or someone in your family wasn't doing too well or you're having financial trouble, you can go to the footy, whoever you are, and you can kind of vent. You can project it all onto the players. None of that's ideal in a perfect world, but as terms of vices go, it gets pretty innocuous. And I'm very aware that I'm at the footy, surrendering to that, and then once I leave, you know, Dragons have inevitably lost usually at the moment. I'm like, well, obviously this is not the be all and end all. Yeah. And I slowly calm down and get back to, I'm just Joe, you know, the footy is not me. There's a bit of a way. But you know what? I feel like these people, a lot of them, would be better off with footy. Because to me, they're the exact same, but with politics or a particular social issue. You know, like on Instagram, I'll put up, go the Dragons, and I'll be me in my Dragons jersey. These people, in my opinion, often are wearing, instead of a Dragons jersey, they're wearing a political jersey or a self-help jersey or a success jersey or, you know, I feel, and that's why I kind of, at one point when I was a bit more like, Joe's going to change the world, I was like, how much time do I have to play soccer? And, you know, and I watch footy, but like, it's trivial really, isn't it, at the end of the day? Like, why do I care so much about this? And then I kind of done a 180. I'm like, no, those are the most important things. And it's everything else that is bullshit, because the other stuff is not trivial. That's what makes it so trivial to me. Whereas because this is so trivial, That's what makes it so valuable. And that's backwards logic, so that can't be. And yet, what we're talking about is I've never ever messaged someone, like someone who's putting up their vote and they're proudly putting on Instagram at the moment for the referendum. And I'm not messaging going, you're better off supporting the Dragons if you want to support a losing side.
Did you just reveal
No, I didn't reveal anything.
I think we can reverse engineer from there.
Because we've had people on both sides.
I've seen people on both sides.
I haven't seen any people posting.
We have.
Really?
I have.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I showed him one last night. I just think it's so funny.
Lebanese people, mate. They're
mainly Lebanese people.
Different breed.
Actually, if my... sorry.
You don't want to comment? You backtrack.
No comment.
We've held...
Certain Italians in the community had access to Instagram.
Yeah. It's very... it's fascinating. Like, to me, that could not be less of a worthwhile... and again, there's an issue. There's a thing at the moment. You got to vote. Vote. Consider your position and do it properly as best you can. But it's just there's always... And the funniest thing is... I guess there's there was, let's say, Black Lives Matter. There's Me Too movement. There's always big trending things that, touch on a very genuine issue. But then I always find it so fascinating to see the bandwagonism that comes with those. And it's kind of like when everyone got Ray-Bans in year 7. I was like, damn, I want Ray-Bans. Ray-Bans, sorry, the shoes. Do you remember? Do you remember the little...
Oh, yeah.
I was like, damn, I want them. And but at least those were just shoes. Like, people bandwagon virtue signaling, and it's like the same to me as when they're like, I'm crowdfunding for this thing and I'm fundraising for this thing. It's like, I'm glad you're doing that so you can tell us about
the flip
it.
Side.
And how much are you telling yourself you care about X or Y? Just so you can have something that you can put on Instagram.
The flip side is...
Joe's a cynic, I know.
You got to do something.
And you got to do something. And, I was talking to a family friend the other day. He's talking to me. He's talking about going to church. And he goes, but, going to church, but, I believe the most important thing is how you treat people. He goes, and if you have an opportunity to help someone, you should help them. He goes, and I believe it's wrong not to help someone if you have a chance to help them. And put like that, I agree.
Sure.
But when helping someone becomes about not helping someone anymore and about making you feel good, it's not helping someone. It's unlike, and I think you're kind of collision. It's like driving with blurry vision to me.
When that becomes the rule, then that can be a problem.
And when it becomes a rule, it can be a problem. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to do something. I have to. And I don't know. It's just so much crap that actually gets in the way. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I've ranted for a bit, but what is missing from the conversation around what else about, I don't know, activism or serial campaigners?
It's counterintuitive. It kind of makes you just want to be on the other side of things sometimes.
Which is never a good...
Yeah. Exactly.
Never a good strategy.
It's like, I don't... Even if you're right, like, I don't want to be that person.
That's what argument is.
Yeah.
When you're arguing with someone, you get to that point where, because we're having to go at each other, you just go, well, I just don't want to concede to you now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you just find anything you can to...
It's like, all right, well, if I'm going to lose this, I'm just going to really annoy you. Get super petty.
Yeah, I think it's... there's been a similar circumstance where it's not on the activism side of things, but if you've ever tried to convince someone to buy something, for example.
It's like, but that's what it is. It is a sales... Trying to get someone to convince someone is a sales...
Yeah, but it would be like trying to convince someone to buy a laptop.
Yeah.
But also saying, no, you don't understand what you're talking about. This is what you need. You what makes you think this is ridiculous. I'm telling you need this and you're ignoring me right now.
Yeah. Are you insane?
It's like, no one ever, you just walk, you'd be like, can you piss off?
Well, I remember being told that you needed the vaccine to make society safe. And then I've never looked into it. But like since that happened, obviously there's no talk of it like ever. And there's still COVID out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so a big problem for me is that we're usually overly caught up in the moment. We're normally always very caught up in the moment.
Well, there's a tendency to treat the most important thing as the only important thing.
Yeah, that's true
as well. People just hyper focus on that.
And then the only issue is that you look at like the circumstances under which wars start, and things like people love looking back in hindsight history, like World War II and the rise of Hitler, and they love going, you should have snuffed that out in its infancy while you had the chance. And that's the problem. Like maybe a small percentage of the time, there is a very genuine, urgent thing and it has very early warning signs.
Yeah.
But most cases it's probably... Like, for example, when COVID started, I was like, I remember swine flu. I remember all these things that never really hit our shores, really. They did... A lot of them wreaked havoc in other places, which is sad. Like, Ebola and like, terrible things, but in Australia, managed to be quite insulated from that. And so I thought, COVID, that's weird. And then I remember Scott, our friend, showed me like the video of like what they were doing in Wuhan and like people in coats and all that stuff. I was like, this is wild. Like, wow, it sucks being Wuhan right now. And then next minute, it's like, I remember I was when it really hit me, I was just up the road from here with the guy I was working with at the time on an escalator. And he's like, this COVID thing is real. Like stuff's going to shut down. I was like, oh no. It was like, and that's when it actually sunk home that this is actually different.
Yeah.
This is like the 1 in 20 of these crises that gets announced and everyone's panicking about it, that actually warranted actually more action than we took. Yeah. And more worry than we actually had. And so it's very asymmetrical. It's very Taleb because it's like it's the one thing, the one time that you want to react like really fast and snuff something out. He's like when you panic early.
Yeah.
If it's time to panic,
Otherwise,
but when it's not, it's like actually just hold conservative.
Yeah.
And it's almost the opposite. And so that's the challenge with all this stuff. But at the time, it's usually, and it's the same with like even on a smaller level, like just general things you experience in your life or at work or business. Like, for example, there's always something that feels like a crisis that soon after is not necessarily a crisis anymore. You know what I mean? Like even like the loss of business or the loss of, you lose something out, loss of a job and things like that. Often, things work out. But at the moment, it happens and things feel like the end of the world or they're very stressful. And sometimes it's just a bit of patience. And, that's the funny nature of it. I can't imagine, I can't think of anything right now that I could get very worked up about, in terms of a social thing going on that would be best dealt with by getting very angry or, making social media posts about it every day or like, there's just not many things I'm thinking, what could possibly happen that would make me want to be that kind of front foot.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just my disposition. And if you guys are similar, maybe it's just our disposition. Maybe it's good we have people who are a bit more reactive because the people like me will be sitting back a bit more. So it's probably good. You know what I mean? Because you don't need to just jump right in with them. But it's like the alarm goes off. So like before I panic, why is the alarm going off?
Yeah. But at least you got people that are going to be really loud, and then you've got people that are more conservative to offset them in a way. And then you got people sitting in the middle, like the majority of the people.
You got people who disagree completely on the other end of the spectrum.
So in a way you need everyone to all work together.
Beautiful. It's actually all required to be that way. And that's the funny thing. Like it's funny, like a lot of the heated up things and the arguments that happen in around various causes, if you're not actually in there and it's okay to laugh at it, it's not like it's very funny to watch too.
Yeah.
It can make for great entertainment, you know?
But you take...
Like what was the woke conference? That was years ago, but they got into an argument about, that was so funny. Because they're all like speaking a pronoun appropriate way.
Yeah.
But like someone made a mistake or something. Check your privilege and they're just like getting nowhere.
They end up eating themselves.
Well, it's like when someone goes, Ben Shapiro goes to speak at somewhere and someone
enjoys it.
He loves it.
He loves
it. He's good at it as well. But someone will go up, a student will be like, you can tell, like, that thing they've got in their eyes and they're ready to own Ben Shapiro.
What I mean.
They're ready to own. They're like, so, they'll say something about abortion. And then, like, then that person ends up a clip on YouTube of, Ben Shapiro.
Getting roasted.
Not to say, who knows, it's very hard to say, like, what's right or wrong in that scenario, but someone like Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh or these people are can argue their way out of anything, right?
Can I also say there's what we haven't talked about yet? There's a whole bunch of this sort of stuff where I actually look at the people and I go, I don't think you guys are talking about anything.
Yeah.
that's a whole other like this is a fire you have lit in a place like that no one ever goes, and then you are now catastrophizing about the fire that you guys created and asking other people to come and fight the fire. And then you're arguing about the fire, but you actually want the fire, but you actually started it. Not that you know that. You blame each other for starting it. Like that's what it feels like to me. And I feel like I'm watching people talk about a fire in a place that like doesn't matter that they created. Because sometimes I listen, I think, especially the more academic, or abstract or sophisticated the language is, and the issue is. And like the less in like the physical realm it is, for example, or the things you can measure, touch, and see. Like it's especially like academic and philosophical sort of debates, because it's much easier for something to just be a total constructed thing. And it's like they speak in a language that's not. It's certainly not one I speak. I might just be too dumb to understand. Of course, let's never rule that out. But I'm just like, you guys are talking about nothing. You literally have created a game that you want to play. And it's like footy.
Yeah.
It's like footy. That's arguing with an opposition fan about what the right call was. Someone who's not into footy would look like it doesn't even matter. Like, and they'll be listening to us talk about offside and this and that and high tackle and jiu-jitsu, and they'll be going, what does this mean? And like, it is trivial. But the thing with footy is like, usually you eventually come back to like, that's the thing we've made up. That's fun. Whereas this stuff is often like, doesn't leave the realm of, no, this is serious.
Yeah. It depends.
Yeah, man.
I don't know.
Depends.
You can have like...
It definitely depends.
You have like your Ben Shapiro going off.
Yeah,
and you have like the other side going off. But they are in their way coming to...
I like when they can... Like a lot of the time those people go, all right, that's fair. Sometimes at the end.
They got their views.
I'm like, good on you.
But normally, they're sort of not mirroring each other, but sort of ping-ponging different ideas. Yeah. And you're sort of discovering things along the way.
Yeah, but I don't buy the people... I've had people with me, because this is in business as well. People like, no, it's good, you got to fight. And that's how you get places. You got to like have strong... You got to disagree. Just because, yes, you can, but then sometimes you feel like... I feel like this person actually just wants to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's both sorts, right?
Yes and no.
Yes, like eventually, like, arguing for something and you need to say, no, this is what we need to be doing, not that, right? You need to have a strong opinion, you need to back it up. But there's some people who are like, I don't know, you feel like you can just tell when the conversation becomes not about what you're actually talking about. And suddenly it's actually about something else, but using whatever the topic is meant to be as the excuse or the object. Yeah. And like, I feel like there's just so much people looking for fights. Or once they get into it, they can't, that consumes them. The fight consumes them more than the point of the fight.
You know in a lot of cases, yes. But in a lot of cases...
In a lot of cases,
people are arguing what they believe as well.
Oh, mate, yeah. But again, what do you believe so strongly? Like, again, I come back to the Rich Roll example, such a good one. He obviously would believe quite strongly in all that stuff related to if it's vegan, vegetarian, I can't remember. But, like, how and why would he get so worked up? Because, again, there's the counterintuitive point.
You don't even have to get worked up. You can have a more refined approach in sort of not arguing, but talking about what you believe.
Is that just a discipline thing? Is that just like you just let yourself get away with it and that's the only reason that happens? Like, is it a conscious thing to, I guess you do learn the lesson. Okay, don't descend to that level.
Yeah.
When trying to get a point across. Keep it more measured.
But you do sometimes get worked up about things.
Every now and then, I can't stop it. Yeah.
No,
it'll happen every now and then.
Human in a way,
part of the package, huh?
Yeah.
Non-negotiable.
You get worked up of a bunch of different things and you're like, okay, just relax.
And again, I think it's probably good. It's good to care, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd hope so.
It's good to care, at least a little.
You can't, it's like
you can't have zero care.
Yeah, apathy is not the answer.
You can't just
No.
You got to care about something.
I think where it comes to with all this, you got to care about something.
You got to do something. Like, I don't give a...
You can't do nothing. You can't do nothing. I think it's so much easier when you actually have anything you're talking about is grounded in your personal experience. That's what makes things like, for example, something like climate change probably harder because it's a very hard. It's hard to go look at the ozone layer and whatever else. Obviously, you can see examples like the plastic bag parts of it and stuff like that. But like, if you can encounter people who are affected by a particular issue and talk to them, I think that makes a big difference rather than something you have to learn by the news or take expert opinions on. It doesn't apply to everything. Like, the vaccine, like this is what I said to someone. I remember, like, I can self-educate, but I can't delude myself because there's a line where my scientific or medical understanding will hit a wall.
Yeah, that's why.
Because, man, people can write anything. My mum, health, nut. Mate, the opinion changes like every couple of months. And she's listening to experts. I remember years ago, it was like sushi's the best thing for you. Then, don't have sushi. They put sugar in it. Like, all right, so sushi's in and it's out. And they're like fashion trends. They just coming and going. Like, nuts. Yep, nuts are good. I was like, no nuts. Yeah. And this is stuff that, people... it's not my mum. My mum's reading it off experts. And so I can't qualify the experts. I have to rely on someone else to qualify the experts. So I'm relying on an expert of experts. And again, I accept that because there's nothing else I can do. But at the same time, you'll never get like you can never find a concrete answer just because they know it and you don't. And that's why it always seems like good doctors and lawyers and like that, actually always part of what they do is educate you.
Yeah.
So you make informed decisions for yourself as much as you can. Mm. Yeah, I mean, not like this is what you should do necessarily without that. And that's what all good people, even real estate, telco, investing, like financial advisors, they all seem to be, like really good ones seem to be, make it a bit simpler for you. And a part of the service is your education. Because with your education comes confidence.
Yeah.
To believe something or to pay for something or to do something like a treatment or whatever. And it's always about like careers counselor, when you want work experience, what you're doing, you're educating yourself about what is this profession like. You're not trying to take someone else's argument for why you should do that profession. And that is probably, I'd apply that in my opinion to what you believe in and what you're going to take action for or against in the world. Because I would argue, if I had a belief about education, and I would say it's not my goal to get you to believe it because I say it. I might actually get and I had people who sometimes, I think we all have this, but echo back my belief.
Yeah.
Right? And they go, yeah, I'm like you, I believe X and Y. And I think you just get a feeling that, no, you're just looking to be common with that particular group or with me or with something. You don't actually believe it. Maybe the language I'd use is first principles. Like you don't actually believe it from your own experience and discernment up. You're looking for something to latch onto, and then or someone you want to be common with. And it's very different when you actually come to believe something as much as you can for yourself. I don't think you can purely do one or the other, right? Like, man, my views are influenced by people. Obviously, all of them. I can list all of those people. Yeah, I mean, like I'm a product of my time. It's just how much autonomy you get within your constraints. But it's very different, someone being able to decide for themselves. And that was a big thing I think I realized even when thinking about education, because you have to learn things. Just the same way you have to learn things for yourself to really learn them. If you're taking it from somewhere else, you're just in the habit of taking and relying on others. And then you really need to go to them for the next thing. Like I told you I was like those people for that conference. And like the education conference, and then they reached out to me, and I realized it felt like it's just a big marketing product they're creating because people pay to go to this conference, but they give you a grade, like your grade A or whatever. And I had a call with this guy who works there, lovely guy, but he's saying, I'm so glad to be talking to you because I think you and I are so similar, and the way we think. He's like, we've seen your podcast, we've seen this. And I thought, I don't think this guy's found the blue pill. I don't think this guy knows that the next book I'm doing is not, because he was talking about how great self-help was, which is, you can make the case. And he was talking about, that all that stuff. And so I feel like this guy was looking at me, but actually looking at the previous incarnation of me very clearly, like a professional, young, trying to become a thought leader. Education's got to change now person, Joe, and it was very clear that was who he felt he was talking to. And that's at least who he was looking for, which is fair enough because that's the world he's in. But, now obviously I'm a little bit more of a buffoon, and we've done that blue pill stuff and comedy is more interesting and not so much, the purely intellectual. And so I think it's like the same thing. Sometimes you talk to people who even agree with you, or they agree because of you, supposedly, but they're not actually seeing you as you are, because what they were looking for was actually just to fit in with a certain.
Yeah, I've had this experience where, again, uni, like activist groups.
Yeah.
Like I have some pretty strong political beliefs, and people know that. Yeah. So they invite me to these events because they think I'm like, I'm one of them. Oh, yeah. And I'm just like, no way. No, not a chance, because
you're more of a young lib.
It's just, well, that's what I was invited to.
Yeah.
And it's
were you really?
I was, yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
That would have been extreme.
I was just like...
I wouldn't resonate with that environment.
Exactly. It's just a weird thing. I just find it very weird to just make this whole, like, what you believe is like your identity. I've always
found a strange thing that politics becomes a sport. Yeah. And that you have your team that you mainly stick to. And that you're always against. So in Australia, like, Labor and Liberal are the two major parties, the coalition or whatever they're called. And so you kind of given one, it's like religion or a sporting team. You're kind of given one at birth, your parents won. And then, we don't like them. And so this is a democracy, but you vote for this side.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I've never understood why people are like, if you are actually trying to do this democracy thing and you supposedly believe in politics, how are you so firmly in one camp? And it's not normally that black and white, but it takes a really, really like progressive, in their mind, progressive liberal person for the Labor person to like them and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Which makes you feel like, I'm open-minded. But really, you're still so heavily in that camp that, and again, maybe that's the way it has to be. I know maybe human psychology, like I'd say my psychology is so rooted in the values and things I was born into, even if I don't identify with them as strongly, I'm sure the way I think is so heavily still anchored to whatever.
I think I've had
politics, religion, all that. But
I've had a similar experience to you. I think where I've been. This is your politics.
Yeah.
I'm like, like this. You're on this side of the wing, and I'm like, but
we're on the same team.
But at the same time, I'm like, I agree with certain things, like a lot of things that would put me in that bucket, but I don't necessarily go around being like,
you don't feel an affinity.
No, you just label. See something and you can't help but have a view on it.
Yeah,
and
which again, I'm not afraid to most of my beliefs aggregate one way or the other.
I'm
fine with that.
That's just the way
it's more left or more right. If that happens, but I don't want to go. And you don't know if you're doing this. I don't think, because no one necessarily wants to be that person doing this. But you think of the category first, and then you fit the beliefs to the category.
I think I fall short of going, I'm a conservative person that believes this, and it's I'm very about this, and this. I think it just falls into place based on...
Yeah, I like that language, falls into place.
Yeah.
I think these things should fall into place.
But I don't have it within me not to have a view on something. Like to just sit. I don't just...
That's fine.
I can't just sit back.
Yeah.
The way it's like, I don't know, I think this is this, and then that's just the way.
Again, we need people to have views.
Yeah.
How to do it respectfully and like without it being diluted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too diluted.
Yeah.
We're all diluted.
The best way I like to summarize it is Jared Vennett in The Big Short. I work for a bank, but I don't think like a bank. It's just that degree of separation. I'm loosely affiliated with this group, but that's like I'm not one of you.
That's a good way to put it. That's sometimes just the beautiful denial, though. You know,
that's true. Yeah.
I'm going to be in here, but I'm not a corporate pig. You know,
you get the Sunday video.
I have fashion friends.
I'm going to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, but I'm not a corporate pig. I read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And, I listen to Naval, and I'm deep. I'm well rounded. I'm wholesome. Even sometimes I read left wing. Media just to show myself and everyone that I'm not a type. It's like you're the type of not wanting to belong to any type, and then they're the ones that
I'm open-minded.
Countercultural for the sake of being countercultural.
Yeah, there's no one more annoying than someone who thinks they're open-minded.
Oh yeah,
because those are the hardest people to actually.
Do you think you're open-minded?
No. Do you think I'm open-minded?
Well, yeah, but I compare you to like most other, just whatever image I have in my head of closed-minded, I just compare you to that, and I feel like you're more open-minded.
I feel like sometimes I betray what I actually believe, and then you look back and you're like,
I'm so
I don't really believe that.
I'm so wrought with contradictions. That's why I realized stop having these convictions if you don't necessarily need to have them.
All I know is that I don't know a lot of stuff.
Which I know that too, but I forget a lot that I don't know. But I'm giving it a good crack.
You just
giving life a good crack.
You can definitely understand how people get way too into things.
Yeah, I've been I've been way too into things.
I lean on, in certain circumstances, I definitely will lean on the activists. Like you get inspiration. Not that you'll go on social media and you get worked up and be like, I think. Then like you said, you sort of.
It's just so funny now because when you get exposed to see or feel that there's a lot of counterintuitive parts to being very strong-willed about something, very, very active, social, because especially my experiences with the charity and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Then when you hear people talking about the importance of standing up and, never see a need without doing something about it, and whenever you hear someone talk about how important that is, it's so funny because at a previous time that sounds so, but so often I'm sitting there with my cynical little voice mate going, I could also make the exact opposite case to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interventionism that this could, it's you can't overstress one thing. It doesn't seem to work. It always seems to leave something out and throw everything off balance, then if you try to say it, if I tried to explain it, you got to be strong-willed, but not too strong-willed. But how strong-willed? Medium? Sometimes, but not all the time. It depends on what we're talking about.
Depends on the situation.
Okay, well, what situation should you be strong-willed? I don't know, but you'll know it when you see it. But you might not know, because you might be doing it for reasons not about the thing, but something deeper. So it's totally inexplicable. You know what I mean? Like, I think you sound like an idiot even more. Like, you know, and when you're trying to explain that idea of balance, it doesn't really. It's abstractly. It's so hard to. And I feel like you case by case, you just look at things, and it's very case by case. And everyone's a bit different for good reasons. So trying to say this is the better way to do it neglects that. That there's a big part of the balance is people who are very extreme about stuff is actually probably a really important part of the balance. Even though there's no extreme person that sit down and go, do you like how extreme I am? And I'd say, no, not really.
Yeah.
But like, that's why we shouldn't talk, because you should just be left to be that way. And that way I won't try to change people like you. You know, you just do your thing. You know, piss off. I just want to talk about people like you without having any skin in the game on a podcast, you know, with my privileged life. And you know, most of the issues that unfortunately are discussed, unfortunately or fortunately, rarely actually end up at me necessarily, which is a position of privilege. So I don't know what to say. maybe everyone just be Luke. Should everyone just do what they think is right?
I think so.
Could you boil it down to that?
Sometimes.
So, to summarize.
Yes, you passed the test.
Sometimes
to summarize.
Activism is bad except for when it's good.
Yeah, and even when it's good, careful. And when it's bad, it's not necessarily all bad.
Yeah.
But please don't try and give me a pamphlet. Just don't give me a pamphlet for anything.
No pamphlets.
Very soon.
That's the only definitive thing we can take from this
episode. Keep your social media measured. Unless you don't want to. Then just do what you want and express your opinions. We believe in freedom of speech.